Sister and brother surfers of the binary ocean. In this video, we are going to put our if function into place. We're gonna knock it out. So let's just jump right in. Right down at the bottom in our if function, we want to put a variable condition bool. It's going to be a boolean. We want a variable current nest is readable. It's going to be a boolean. We want if control flow stack, that's that global variable we put at the very top of our program. If that is greater than 0, so if there's anything at all on the control flow stack, it means that there has been a prior if statement. So that would mean this is a nested if statement that we're looking at right now. If it is, then we want if let x equal control flow stack dot last current nest is readable. It's going to be set to whatever the top value is on that control flow stack. Else, this is just an error handling thing here, else print error with control flow stack value checking on if. I don't know, that's one of those cryptic errors that if I was using this fourth and I got that, I'd be like, what the are you talking about? But it'll help us with debugging, because at least we could just go through the code and do a find and find this error and see, okay, it's in this part of this if function that we're getting this error. So it'll help in that sense. Okay, so if current nest is readable, then if there is a value on the control flow stack, and it is true, then we want to check the int stack. If stack.count is greater than 0, then let condition value equal int stack.remove last. And that's what fourth does. Whenever it evaluates for an if, when it evaluates the integer stack, it actually removes that top value that it evaluated. If condition value is greater than -1, that means if it's false, then condition bool equals false. Else, so that would mean it is -1 or less, condition bool equals true. Okay, so you see what we're doing? We're keeping track of our conditions, and then we're going to actually put what our if's condition is onto the control flow stack. So we're always tracking that, because we're going to need to know that when we come to an else, and not just an else, because we'll have nested if else's as well, but when we come to the matching else to that if. And that's why a stack-based system works quite well here, because we can, once we get to the end, like a then of an if statement, we know we're at the end of it, so we can pop it off the stack. But until then, we kind of just keep things we keep the computer keeping things in order with our control flow stack. Okay, and then on our if int stack count is greater than 0, we'll put an else here just to handle oddball scenarios. No value on integer stack. This is probably not as oddball as some of the other scenarios we're handling, but current nest. So if there's no value on the integer stack when the if statement tries to evaluate it to see what the condition it should, if it should be true or false, we're going to, instead of looking at the integer stack, we're just going to set our condition to the current nest condition. And that's kind of just a design decision. Gforth will actually just throw an error. We're just going to assume that if it was prior readable, if it was not readable prior, we don't want to just go flipping it with an if. The only thing that we want to flip it with would be an else. Because, if you have an if nested in an if, and that first if was false, then we don't read anything until that matching first if's else statement. So that second if would by nature be false. It would have to be false. So that's why we're doing this. I like this way of doing it better than Gforth, which just throws an error. I like kind of just going with the last value. I think it's just as safe. I don't see any problems with it at this point, so we'll do that. Okay, and then from our if current nest is readable closure here, we want an else there as well. And so if the current nest is not readable, like I said here, if that outer if, and then there's an if within it, and no else has been reached, if that outer if was false, then this one absolutely has to be false. There's no question. So that makes it kind of easy because we just set it to false then. Okay, then on our if control flow stack count is greater than 0 closure, we want to put an else there, and that is going to be if int stack dot count. Once again, we're checking the integer stack. If int stack dot count is greater than 0, let condition value equal int stack dot remove last. Same thing what we did right up here. If condition value is greater than -1, condition bool equals false, else condition bool equals true. I know this stuff is complicated. If you actually go through and do some tests, I did a lot of just trial and error on paper here. You can see I have some if possible if statements like 0, if 10, if 60, else 30, and I went through all these different scenarios testing this stuff. And this is the simplest way that I was able to come up with. So it's just a complex thing. So I think actually this is, I don't know, I'm pretty happy with this, how this turned out actually. So, okay, so then after that else, and then on this if the int stack count is, if there's nothing on the int stack, put an else there, print no value on integer stack, assuming -1, which is true. Okay, so the reason we're doing that is that goes along with this, where we're just assuming, we're just taking the current nest as readable value. If there's nothing on this integer stack, and because we're on the else from the control, there's nothing on the control flow stack, right? So there's nothing on either of those. That means we're coming in pretty fresh here. That means there's no outer if statements. This is the first if statement. So we're just going to assume that the condition is true, because then if we have an if then, it'll evaluate the if then. If we assumed it was false, it would just do nothing. So that's kind of pointless, right? So we're just going to tell the user about it and then assume that it's true. I think that's just kind of another nice thing that GForce doesn't do that I think could be useful. And then at the very end of our function, outside of all the other closures, we're going to take our control flow stack and append our condition boolean onto it. So now our control flow stack, based on that control flow stack, we can get two pieces of key information. We can find that, first of all, if there's something on the control flow stack, we know we're in an if statement. We know we're in it because there's something on the control flow stack. The other thing we can tell is whether that if that we're in, and which one we're in the first one because we're in index 0 of our control flow stack, and we can tell the condition of that one is true or false. And based on that condition, that's where we decide, which part of this process input function to run, which part in the for loop if current nest is readable, or the other part then if it's not readable. So that's our if, and I think that's a good place to stop. In the next video, we'll definitely be able to cover if else and if then, because if then is really a pretty small function. It's pretty simple. So I hope this is making sense so far. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I like discussing this kind of stuff and thinking through it. If you find any issues, let me know. And thanks for watching. Peace out.